I can't believe how many people are here. Welcome. There are apparently over 1,200 of us. So I have this suspicion that there's a couple people in the audience who have been here for every single Code for America Summit since we started. If you have, and I have, so I am standing, will you please stand up? I can't see you very well. There, Mark, yes. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back. I want to give an extra warm welcome, and some of you came this morning, to people who are here at the Code for America Summit for the first time. And if this is your first summit, will you also please stand? Oh my gosh! Everybody who is sitting now, please look at the people who are standing. Give them a warm welcome when you're out in the hallways. Make them feel very much part of this community. I got to keep with the welcomes and welcome all of our amazing brigade members. Apparently now there are something like 35,000 people around the country and around the world who get together on a weekly or occasional basis and help their communities through civic technology. If you are a member of a Code for America brigade, will you please stand? You guys are so awesome. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize our government partners, and that could be fellowship partners that we've had in past years, the amazing people that we worked with through the fellowship this year, some who are going to be with us next year, and also folks maybe who just work really closely with their brigade or have worked with us in some other capacity, one of the boot camps we've run. If you're a Code for America government partner or perhaps a future one, will you please stand? Thank you for coming here, and thank you for your public service. This should be a place where you were always thanked for doing that public service. Two more quickly. Fellows, alumni fellows, current fellows, and we have 10 people here who are going to be fellows next year out of a larger group. Fellows, could you please stand? Always, always in the Code for America family. Thank you for being here, especially those who've traveled and have come back to be part of this again after they've gone on to new parts of their careers. Lastly, there's a bunch of people in the audience who support this organization either by sponsoring this event or funding us for some of the activities we do, and I'd like to recognize them. Could you please stand if you're a sponsor or funder of Code for America? I love that Mark stands for everything. You can just stand up for every single thing. Well, thank you guys. There's actually just one other group that I'd like to recognize as we kick this off, and that's those of you who are here for the support group. You know who you are. I or someone else has told you that this isn't just a practical conference where you're going to learn from your peers and teach your peers, but it's a support group for people who work in government, and not just people who work in government or with government, but those who are trying to change the status quo and have recognized that we have to take risks in order to do that. And this is a unique group of people, and we have to really recognize the role that this event plays and this community plays in supporting each other, because working in government can be really hard. It can be hard because it's slow, because systems resist change. I have a friend who said the other day, I feel like working in government is trying to carve Mount Rushmore with a toothpick. We all know those times. It can also be hard sometimes because we still have so far to go between understanding what the public wants and having the public understand what we're doing in government and having the public feel heard and understood by those of us in government. And sometimes that change really means that the system rejects or punishes those who are trying to change it. And then it doesn't feel slow, it feels fast and demanding and publicly challenging. And those moments are really hard too. And this is an important community for us not only to remember that when you're in it, it can feel like change is slow, but that when we pull back and look at the arc of our progress over time, we are making change. But also to celebrate our successes. You're going to see a lot of successes talked about on stage today from the Code for America family and the larger network. But it's those times when things don't go well, when they don't go as planned, that I think we learn the most. And for a number of you in the audience, you'll know that we've had those times this year. We always have them. And I just want to thank those of you who stuck with us this year when things didn't go well, when we had to weather a storm together. Those are the moments I will remember most after this year. They meant the most to me. I feel like we grew and we changed and we got better at what we do, and we're better and stronger for the next fight because of them. So for all of you who weathered storms, whether it was with us or in your own communities, thank you, and we should really honor those moments. Speaking of things not going exactly to plan, my week did not go at all according to plan last week. You can probably imagine that the team was very busy setting up the Code for America Summit, and I should have been here helping them and putting the final touches on this amazing event. But I woke up a week ago Sunday to the news that a very good friend and colleague, former colleague of Code for America's, had died unexpectedly. Sorry, I haven't been advancing my slides. Jake Brewer was someone who was involved in inspiring Code for America in the beginning. He was the director of communications for Sunlight Foundation, which fiscally sponsored us when we were getting set up. In our very first year, he directed one of the projects that we worked on that was designed to help veterans, and that was a lifelong passion of his. Most recently, Jake worked in the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House, where I spent a year, almost a year ago now, and he worked with my former colleagues and good friends. And because a lot of you in the audience knew Jake, and because I think all of us who knew him wish that those of you he hadn't met did know a little bit about him, later on we're going to take a moment to honor his memory in a very special way. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you about 3 things that happened to me in the last week because things didn't go according to plan. And the first of those things is that I was in front of the National Cathedral for Jake's memorial service, and I ran into somebody who leads the Domestic Policy Council for the White House, a woman named Cecilia Munoz. So Cecilia is somebody that I worked with briefly when I took my year off to work in government. Now, when you have to remember, this was just when healthcare.gov had launched and not worked out very well. Cecilia realized that if the key policy initiative of that administration could be threatened by a technology implementation, immigration reform, which was what her office was focused on, was also threatened by technology implementation. And she asked for some help from our office, and I was very honored to go help out. We recruited what we called sort of a mini tech surge at the time, bringing a few folks from DC in to assess some of the services that we knew were going to have to scale in the event that the legislation that was on the table actually passed. So we had a couple of folks. We spent several weeks with amazing people at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration, and we were asked to give a report about the technical barriers. We did all this work. We looked at a number of technical barriers, but in the end, we issued a report that said, the barriers that matter here aren't technical. You have an amazing team of people who understand policy and law and regulation, and they are some of the best in the country. But your organizational structure is not set up to understand what users experience when they are using your service and what they will experience when there are many, many more of them. And you're not set up to be able to take that into account when you write law and policy and regulation and change based on your user experience. So we left them with this report, and this was now almost 18 months ago. Others have carried on this work after I left, including Dana Chisnell, who is going to speak on Friday and close out the conference, and I think you're really going to enjoy that talk. But when I saw Cecilia in front of the National Cathedral on this very sad day, I did ask her how the project had been going, and she lit up with enthusiasm and passion, and she proceeded to tell me with so much excitement about how they had launched the college scorecard out of the White House. I hope some of you saw this a couple weeks ago. That when they did that, the team built prototypes and they tested them with users, and she happily directed the staffers and the policymakers to change direction based on that user feedback. And she had a message for me. She said, it's not just immigration, it's not just college readiness that needs this 21st century government approach. It's every issue that we face. And she said, importantly, it's not just starting with users isn't just how we should be making technology, it's how we should be making government. And so when you think, thank you. If you think that we're not making progress, we are. And I also gleefully told her about the amazing community of people who have been doing this in state and local government. She's very excited to get to know all of you, and hopefully will come to the conference next year. The second thing that happened to me also at Jake's memorial service, in a time that did not go as planned, is a story from another friend who works in government. And she was sharing why this work is important to her. This friend grew up in a small town in Florida that had lost its downtown when the big box stores moved in. Her parents devoted their lives to making that community mean something, to creating public spaces that nurtured the community. And their role model and their inspiration was Jane Jacobs and her fight to save the West Village in New York City, which is coincidentally where my parents have the pleasure of living now because of Jane's courageous work. Now, the thing that struck me when my friend was telling me this story of Jane Jacobs, who was fighting the powers that be in federal government, fighting urban planners, fighting those who wanted to deem this neighborhood blighted and raise it for new development or bisect it with a freeway, the thing that struck me was her tactic and her language. And it sounded so much like what Cecilia was delighted with about her successes with the 21st Century Government and Domestic Policy Council. What Jane Jacobs essentially said was, put away your theories, put away those top-down plans, and go talk to people. Ask them, is this place blighted, or is this where you live? And this is a wonderful reminder of why we work at the local level, but more importantly, how we should work at the local level in a way that not only works for the people, but is done essentially by the people. And it's why we always return to this quote. I know many of you know it, but as Jane Jacobs said, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. Now, the third thing I'd like to share with you that happened when my week didn't go as planned is something that Jake Brewer left us, very literally. It's a sticky note that his colleagues found on his monitor at his desk in the White House when they went in on Monday morning. And it's something that has resonated with a lot of people, and particularly with my friend and colleague, Catherine Bracy, who was Code for America's Senior Director of Partnerships and Ecosystem. And Catherine was a very close friend of Jake's. And I would like to ask Catherine to come up and tell you about this gift that Jake left us and to help honor Jake's memory. Catherine.
It's true that we lost a family member last week, but our community, our civic tech community, lost a hero. And as Jen mentioned, Jake had a truly remarkable career. As Marcy Harris, who I believe is here today, has said of Jake at a memorial service for him last week, he was like the Forrest Gump of civic tech. He seemed to be everywhere, not only at the Sunlight Foundation and Code for America, but he founded Define American, which helped change the debate about immigration reform in this country. He worked at change.org and, of course, at the White House. But what was remarkable about Jake's work is not the places he had been. It was the community he created wherever he went. And in fact, when his family cleaned out his desk, they found this Post-it. For those of you who don't know what a cuirass is, it's a term from a Kurt Vonnegut book, which means a group of people who, unknown to themselves, are affiliated or linked in this powerful network greater than the sum of its parts. And there really is not a better way to describe Jake's essence. If he were here, as he was for just about every past summit, rest assured he would be cultivating you. So I hope that all of you, especially our first-timers, will consider yourself part of the Code for America cuirass. And Jake was, of course, also an amazing public servant. He was the true Platonic ideal of an American citizen. And he had such a pure and optimistic passion for democracy and empowering everyday people. He inspired that passion in all of us at Code for America. And last month, he sent a typically excited email to his colleagues at the White House proposing that at a tech conference some of them were preparing to speak at, they asked the audience to recommit to their responsibility as citizens. We think there's no better way to honor Jake than to kick off this summit by recommitting ourselves. And with apologies to our friends who are here from outside the country, we're asking you all to stand and take this pledge with us in honor of Jake.
Ready?
I pledge to be an active citizen, to show up for others, to govern myself, to help govern my community. I recommit myself to my country's creed, to cherish liberty as a responsibility. I pledge to serve and to push my country, when right to be kept right, when wrong to be set right. Wherever my ancestors and I were born, I claim my country, and I pledge to live like a citizen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, dear.
Thanks.